First of all, I would like to thank you all for inviting me and deciding that this presentation was up for this conference. I have been in awe of all the work shown and done yesterday and today by Chiara. And I only wish that we could have been part of some regional projects like this, because our small part of any Roman province that we belong is often overlooked. This presentation is actually bordering on storytelling. And it's going to be a bit personal as well. For a prologue, I have to tell you that Historical Institute of the University of Montenegro is a small research institution that has less than 20 researchers. Until a year ago, I was the only historian dealing with antiquity, researching antiquity in the whole of Montenegro, not just in the institute, but the whole of Montenegro. Also, University of Montenegro does not have studies in archaeology, history of art, classical philology, ethnology, or anything remotely close. Students of history do not have classes or any kind of lesson in Latin or, God forbid, ancient Greek. They're also not accredited for PhD studies in antiquity. So we are not so hopeful for young people to join us here. So as for the storytelling, once upon a time in a land far away, or more precisely in year 2013 in Montenegro, when I started working at the Historical Institute, I applied for a project. It was a personal project of mine with just one researcher, me, called Epigraphica Montenegrina, where I wanted to make a digital database of all, let's say, for starters, Latin inscriptions in Montenegro. So far, there are around 300 inscriptions originated in Montenegro, and only half of them survived until today. So I started my field research and went to search and find as much inscriptions as I could, taking photos, measurements, and so on. I also spent 2 months in Heidelberg trying to copy their database and methodology to use for this type of, let's say, national database. So in 2013, I started the research. In 2014, it started to look something about something. In 2017, it went semi-live. And it looks something like this, because we used exported JSON files actually from Heidelberg, trying to incorporate it. All the photos that were also shared with Heidelberg database were actually mine. The whole website was put on the platform of the University of Montenegro and published by the Historical Institute of Montenegro. So that was something that I dedicated several years of my life. It should have looked different. It should have looked more modern. It should have been searchable more, and so on. But it was great, because the current state is like this. So 4 years of my life is now cannot be reached, because the University of Montenegro actually transferred to another platform for the whole website of university, and left the whole database in some kind of repository that they are not willing to give the password for. So everything is left somewhere behind. It's not the only project that was done in the Historical Institute bearing the digital culture, heritage, and digital humanities that started. At the same time, in 2013, also the National Library of Montenegro started digitizing more rare and old books and journals from Montenegro. Also, a colleague of mine started the project of the Cyber Oriental Museum of Montenegro. That site is still operational. She actually took photos and all the information in all the museums in Montenegro dealing with the Islamic and Oriental heritage, cultural heritage. So every objects of everyday use, books, clothing, and everything she presented at this website. Moving on, as you can see, we had a project dealing with the transhumance and cultural heritage of cartoons, a speciality in Mediterranean when you actually displace people and cattle during summer months and during heat. I joined the project from the beginning, and suddenly, as an ancient historian, I found myself dealing with the 18th century and 19th century abandoned huts in the mountains of Montenegro, and suddenly somehow became an expert in GIS, putting all these funny little colorful dots that are representing the huts with all the attributes. Are they livable, inhabitable, have a roof, what kind of type of stone is used, and so on. We collected through our field and library research, we collected data about 193 cartoons and more than 2,900 huts or houses or whatever you want to call them in the area of only Kuči mountain that are between on the border of Montenegro and Albania. We collected, as I said, many data. You see the sketches that the architects made. The attribute table was really full, but unfortunately, we did the database in QGIS, which is an open software that uses OpenStreetMap as a layer for exporting it online. So when you export the line of those cartoons, you don't see anything except the gray area because it's open street map. You don't have streets in the mountains. So the OpenStreetMap actually just showed the gray area and colorful dots. So again, the database was not exported online as it should be and presented. So in 2019, Historical Institute got the funding from the Ministry of Science of Montenegro for a grand national project about cultural heritage of Montenegro. We started this project bearing in mind that the concept of universal cultural values reflects the idea that certain forms of cultural heritage, whether tangible or intangible, possesses significance that extends beyond their local or national origins and contribute to the shared legacy of humanity. The digital tools should enable to safeguard the fragile or endangered heritage while simultaneously allowing the global accessibility and participation. So we very enthusiastically started this project. It was supposed to be a three-year project, and all the researchers from the Historical Institute were involved, but also people from the Faculty of Architecture, people from abroad. So we started this idea to have the GIS pinpointing all the cultural heritage in Montenegro through chronological and territorial sphere. As you can see, I chosen the colors. They're very nice, right? So you have prehistory, ancient times, all through the 21st century. So the main goal was to enrich the knowledge of historical, social, and cultural processes resulting in the present Montenegrin cultural landscape, determine its characteristic in current incarnations, as well as to develop the new digital tool. Why? Because the Ministry of Science asked to have a commercial product at the end of the project. That was one of the things we had to do. So we decided to make a commercial mobile application, a kind of tourist application, for the future valorization in commercial purposes and preservation. Of course, as we are all specialists in some chronological period, mine was prehistory and ancient history, so I decided to go out of my comfort zone and starting describing prehistoric sites. The planned activities should cover the continuum from deciphering historical context, creating certain segments, and our research consists of that so-called desk research, archival, librarian, and other collection, but also field research, location survey, drawing plans, taking photo and video material, interview, and so on. At first, we envisaged to have around 500 monuments and artifacts of cultural historical heritage to cover it in the database and relevantly processed. They are selected, as I said, according to the chronological, thematical, problematical, territorial dimension, whatever you want. Moreover, we should have covered both tangible and intangible cultural heritage in addition to the sometimes neglected field of creative industry. All that should have been presented at the project website that you see here. And we started with the expert in GIS, a Slovenian professor who closely followed their Slovenian example because they did something like that already in Slovenia. It's almost 30 years ago that they started it. So we made, you see on this slide, we made online form that all the researchers should do with the drop-down menu where you select the municipality, where you put the name, where you put the all the attributes that you should have. But despite the similar visual and functional impression, our WebGIS actually developed in almost inverse order than the Slovenian. Let me just say that the professor almost had a nervous breakdown because historians are too narrative. Historians want too much. This web application should present itself with as less as characters as possible, with more visual and geographical data than the narrative data. Nevertheless, after 3 attempts, we finally made the form presentable for our researchers because they were always complaining that there were not too many characters. We had to, broaden and broaden and broaden those little fields. All the text, maps, and photos were also attached into this form, but recordings, speech in different dialects, and storytelling or other multimedia should be stored somewhere else and eventually put on YouTube. The application, the mobile application that we made, was developed by the commercial partner, Identity and Promotion, and it was mostly rested on the appealing visuals. Again, the colorful dots. In this case of the ClioMap project, our main target were tourists visiting the country. As some of you may know, Montenegro is mostly acknowledged for the tourism, seasides, high mountains, and so on. So this application had the potential for constant upgrade and continued relevance. So we started, uploading it to the mobile application. So it looks really nice. You see the colorful dots that should represent every chronological period. You see I'm really sorry that it's in our language and not in English, but you will hear why and what's going on. So you have the attributes or description, either historical, archaeological, architectural, whatever you name it, we got it. And beautiful photos that we took on film. But what happened? In 2020, of course, COVID happened. So there were no field researchers anymore. We couldn't go to the libraries abroad and archives abroad to bring something more. And the funding was temporarily paused. As I said, we had kind of a problem of integrating the narrative or too much narrative that historians actually wanted to put in the GIS system. That was something that we tried to somehow overcome, trying to put it mildly, to socialize spatial information. We started, with ArcGIS, but we left it all in the web form. We still haven't exported it online as we should. So in 2022, we had some ideas how we want to proceed. At the time, I started a bilateral project with the School of Architecture from Tianjin University in China. And we focused on several sites around Skadar Lake. Here you can see the work they have done on Žabljak Crnojevića, a medieval fortress. And we discussed to do 3D reconstructions and visualization to incorporate in the database and we started making a new project application for a new national project that was called Virtual Museum of the Cultural Historical Heritage on the Lake Skadar Basin, or Virtus. That should have incorporated all of that, but also storytelling and so on. The project was awarded funding. It was actually at the first place of all the projects that are applied in Montenegro. But unfortunately, in the winter of that year, the whole call was annulled, and there was not another call for national projects. In 2022, we also were able to pinpoint very strong deficiencies of this project because territorial and chronological discrepancy was seen after the mass input in the database. There was also a huge discrepancy in research approach and writing styles. Our license for ArcGIS was expiring. Mobile app is still not translated into English. So the whole point of having a mobile app for tourists was somehow misleading. And the main problem is continuous funding. All this led us to believe that the Historical Institute of one university is not the institution to lead such a grand project that should have been done by Ministry of Culture or Agency for Protection of Cultural Heritage. And now, talking about universal values that we understood and wanted to present during this project also showed the incoherence that I mentioned. Archaeological map of Montenegro exists, but it hasn't been seen. anywhere, anytime, by anyone. Ministry of Culture decided to take the results of our project and presented it as something that Ministry of Culture should continue. Ministry of Science did not continue any funding, so we couldn't continue with buying the equipment or softwares or applications that we need. The Historical Institute decided to continue the license for ArcGIS, which is a rarity in Montenegro, unfortunately, even for some other major institutions here. So in 2022, we were all enthusiastic that we should continue this, that we should present all our findings online, and trying to make something more consistent with the hype of virtual reality and things that archaeological parks and other sites did already. At the end, I'm going back just a little bit. At the end, we had the project result that was in style of our previous director and our previous management, and that is a book. We had a really nice conference, international conference here in Podgorica, and we had a really nice book titled the same as the project. But at the end, that was the only thing that we can show the world that we did. Ideas that we have in 2025 are a bit different than 2022. The golden dream of Historical Institute of the University of Montenegro is to be a partner in the Horizon project. All the calls, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the calls in the Horizon project are not something that historians molded in the sense of 19th century are acceptable. Most of the calls are tangentially involving us about something like climate protection or climate protection of cultural heritage, where historians can research are there changes in the landscape or at the object itself. So now we have a bilateral project with the Chinese again, this time with the University in Nanjing, about the monitoring and AI prediction in the protection of cultural heritage. It's a very small 2-year project with almost no funding, except for the academic tourism, me going to Nanjing and they came to Montenegro. We decided to have just one case study, the walls above Kotor and the fortress of St. Ivan, trying to decide to gather the data because, of course, Montenegro doesn't have any kind of sensors that could collect the data about this. So now we are trying to find some data about seismological activities, the rain falling and so on, and also to have a historical research from the paintings or literary descriptions of the walls and the fortress to see the changes during time, so that AI can predict what can happen. I can tell you what can happen because if they build a motorway that they planned crossing the Bay of Kotor, there will be no walls in the future. Another idea that we have that it's, as I can see, also close to something that Chiara mentioned or that I have visualized in what Chiara mentioned, is the emotional landscapes. So we have a professor of the Faculty of Mathematics here in Montenegro who is trying to train AI to recognize emotions in historical texts. So immediately I jumped up with the inscriptions and I said, I want to do emotional landscapes. Okay. The territory of the Balkans and the small Montenegro is overloaded with emotions of all kind during history. Unfortunately, as the more than I think 70% of the Latin inscriptions that we have in Montenegro are funerary inscriptions, most of the emotions shown are profound sorrow and sadness, but hopefully someday we can also pinpoint some other emotions, or at least in some other historical periods. So another idea is to have emotional landscapes to recognize the emotions, even maybe geographically pinpoint them, and so on. Also, storytelling. During all these projects that Historical Institute did, we had great communications with elementary schools. We even did a book for children about the ancient Roman site of Doclea. We also presented the idea that was, of course, not realized, of public engagement and student engagement, to put the databases all online, that everybody through a mobile application can access it and do some changes in the database if the information is not correct, especially information about how to reach certain cultural heritage. Again, mentioning that Montenegro is almost 92% mountains. So new ideas exist. I know that everything that I've said is not recommending us much to take us as a partner in any kind of project, but at least we have an ancient historian, a medieval historian, two historians of art, several people dealing with 20th century. So some of us could do something. Not to say that Historical Institute at our university is the only university department that it has done something. In the recent years, there were two projects, IPA projects, where the lead partner was Faculty of Maritime Studies, later on the Institute for Interdisciplinary and Multidisciplinary Studies. As you can see, it was in two parts, Rex for All. It was led by an archaeologist who hails from Belgrade, actually, and it aimed to create the innovative tourism offer based on the underwater cultural heritage. In the first part of the project, the first 2 years in the Eastern Adriatic regions, because that was the project between Bosnia, Croatia, and Montenegro. And later on, in the 2.0 version of the Southern Adriatic region, because it was the project between Montenegro, Albania, and Southern Italy. You can see what were they trying to achieve, and they were a bit smarter than us, a bit more modern than us, and definitely envisioned more. The results presented just a month ago was that they found the wreck of this boat. There are many boats connected with the story of bringing back the Montenegrin migrants from the United States of America when the First World War started. So they are, as you can see, researching that. But for me, the more important thing is that they started the archaeological laboratory, but unfortunately at the Faculty of Maritime Studies, and they plan to start something like an archaeological institute in Montenegro, because Montenegro does not have an archaeological institute. We have a Center for Conservation and Archaeology where most of our archaeologists work. And they are licensed for excavations and that type of research, but they are not licensed as a research scientific institution. So meanwhile, while I was talking what we wanted to do but didn't do, what we wanted to do but did, what we envisioned and had ideas in 2022 and 2025, and that the Historical Institute was actually the first one who started any kind of database on any kind of cultural heritage, starting with a long time ago in a land far away with Epigraphica Montenegrina. Young people started to do some things with their startups, and during their studies at the electrotechnical faculties or faculty of mathematics and programming and so on. So now you have several, as you can see, applications concerning the capital of Podgorica, the tourist capital of Montenegro, Budva, the digital cultural route that you can see and explaining everything. You have the presentation of 3D virtual heritage. And actually, the VREX for All 2.0 had the B2B event where many of these young people presented themselves and their startups. They have great ideas. They had the cultural heritage tourist chatbot. That's not live yet, but they had great ideas, and that just shows that all the ideas the Historical Institute has are, just overrun by time. So meanwhile, while we discuss these huge horizon ideas, while we discuss the climate changes that are endangering cultural heritage of Montenegro, while I discuss with myself what to do with Epigraphica Montenegrina still is not reachable, and I don't want to lose everything. Meanwhile, the kids are doing it. And meanwhile, in epigraphy, as I think everybody knows, we are already predicting the past and making us as epigraphers almost non-valuable as the end user. Just to show how much we have to actually be coherent instead of incoherent, how much we have to share with each other, firstly here in Montenegro and then regionally speaking, because as I said, this part of the Balkans or this part of the Roman Dalmatia or this part, whatever you want to call it, Southeastern Europe, is often overlooked. I think that Dragana and Chiara and others heard enough of me of trying to explain where Montenegro is and how Montenegro looks and what do we have in Montenegro. But we have to share with each other. The archaeologists in the Center of Conservation and Archaeology are not cooperating with the Faculty of Maritime Studies in their archaeological lab. Historical Institute is the licensed research institution but cannot do any excavations. As I said, Center can do excavations but cannot do projects, scientific projects. Agency for Protection of Cultural Heritage, as a main institution for that, has access to studies, drawings, and everything else from the previous research, but it's not too keen to share. So the incoherence is more than obvious. We should, if we want to do something more, we should cooperate much more. We should cooperate regionally much more. The ideas are there. I would like to call to address everyone to, if you have any ideas how to make everything better, please do let me know. And thank you.